or they may live in their cars, or homeless shelter with relatives or friends, or some other things that will come up that will keep them from getting into a home. They may be homeless because of economic problems, eviction to make room for new housing, escaping a abusive family situation. Oftentimes, parents with these issues have had a history of violence and neglect and severe poverty in their lives, which is related to chronic homelessness. We see rising poverty and homelessness among children and youth of color. It is seen in the increasing levels of residential and school segregation, gaps in educational access, opportunity and achievement, and also there are more African American under correctional control in prison and in jail, probation or parole. There are approximately 1.6 million homeless youth and children in the United States, as estimated by the National Center on Family Homelessness. What does it mean to be an unaccompanied homeless student that is confronted by overwhelming obstacles stacked against them, such as great risk of abuse, homicide, suicide, illness, and mental health problems, and issues with access to health care and so forth? As a senior at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, a student named Brooke, who is studying philosophy, is not only disabled, she's a first-generation working class and FAFSA dependent McNair scholar student. Brooke is a college student who attended school in 2010 through 2015, became homeless. She didn't know where her next meal would come from. Very few people knew of her situation and didn't do anything to help. She didn't know how to ask for help because she was raised that it was a sign of weakness. It was something that her family frowned upon. Homelessness and hunger is not a thing or an issue, and most people do not associate this with college students. College students need to be identified and empowered to experience these challenges to help them come forward and receive assistance so they can continue on with their studies and complete degrees and move on with their lives. As many children who are homeless or families who are struggling to make ends meet, many are on free and reduced breakfast and lunch in schools. And for Brooke, a college student, her father left her when she was 6 years old, and her mother was left homeless, struggling to raise her children. She had free, reduced, and breakfast and lunch at school, but she also knew that she had less than her peers. Brooke realized how difficult it was for her mother, a single working parent with 3 children who didn't have an education or family support or access to food, but made do with canned goods received from the food pantry. Communities can be a powerful source and influence in the lives of homeless children and families. We can be sure that the basic needs of children and families are met, such as food, clothing, health services, which is a key to nutrition. It's important that people who are helping and working with homeless families really listen and hear the voices of homeless parents and single mothers, college students, and other homeless adults. We need to include their ideas in planning that would be in their planning, and it would be necessary to help and support them. Hundreds and thousands of homeless spend the night under bridges, shelters, on the streets, and the concern is that most of these homeless individuals and families may have serious mental illness. This is a concern for the general public and for mental health professionals. On any given night, about 600,000 people are homeless and 2 million at some time in any given year. The main source of support for the homeless are Social Security that is provided by the government, emergency public shelters that are operated by volunteers or religious groups. Many times shelters are filthy, dangerous, and crime is always going to happen, and with little privacy. For those who are mentally ill, they avoid shelters because they fear violence and can't handle the crowds and noise and confusion. How did they become homeless? Homelessness didn't just happen overnight. It started in childhood. Families and adults become homeless when there is crisis in their lives, or when their families can no longer afford rent, poor family support, breaking the law, alcohol and addiction, which is a real problem. Many of the poor and homeless are in danger of losing their homes because their rent went up or their income decreases. Those who have served time in prison when they are released have a hard time finding a place to live because families are no longer there for support. They have to reconnect by getting their lives in order and resuming to get their Social Security benefits back when they have already been evicted. Having a criminal record doesn't help, and it makes it hard for them to find a home. Housing is very important for families and children, teens and single adults, and the mentally ill. But as important as housing is, it won't solve all of the homeless issues. People tend to think or assume that everything is fine because they are sitting comfortably in their chair and feeling secure in their homes. For those who work with younger children, teens and adults, informing the community of their needs and educating others of this problem is very important. To help prevent homelessness is something that will require friends, neighbors, families, and community members to come together to promote strong families. Our society as a whole must engage every citizen to talk about and discuss the challenges that are facing young children as well as our teens and adults and families who are struggling. Putting in place prevention resources like emergency rental and housing assistance, utilities assistance can greatly help these families. Feeling a sense of isolation, homeless families, children, teens, and adults feel disconnected from their communities. Creating caring family centers so families can gain the skills they can to utilize all the community sources needed for a healthy, functioning family is important. It is also important that young children have access to highly quality care during their preschool and grade school years, and empowering and the total family toward more positive and nurturing practices is important to moving families toward the right direction. Homeless adolescents face several problems, including depression, low self-esteem, alcohol or drug abuse, antisocial behavior, and trouble with law enforcement officials. Many of the homeless adolescents also lack parental figure for guidance, will start looking elsewhere, and sometimes are heading in the wrong direction. Maslow delineated the basic needs of love, security, and trust as essential to the growth of a healthy person. Homeless children confront especially difficult barriers in developing their essential needs for healthy functioning. For homeless children, perhaps the most important serious need is their identity. Who am I? The lack of having a home, a place to put down their things, and where their favorite toys and books will be placed is essential to them. It is difficult for these individuals to get housing. Housing is very important for families and children, teens and singles, adults, and mentally ill, read the wrong one. Thinking of a society where young children and teens are struggling to find a comfortable home to lay their heads down and at night. No homeless person, I'm so sorry, I jumped my conclusion, I'm sorry, let me go back. For homeless families and children, constant changes in residency, school, relationships can leave families and children at few resources when looking for a place for security. So young children are most affected, and it is very important for them to see that their parents are being accepted, valued, and supported as an important, either with their school or within the community. So if my conclusion is this, and we need to really, really think about how we as a community or individuals and families can reach out to these homeless people, the homeless children. Homelessness affects families with young children. It is the young voices that tugs at our hearts as school professionals work to help them, these children become safe and feel safe. Communities coming together working to help educate, provide resources for families, teens, and individuals along individual adults who are struggling to keep a roof over their head and food on the table, and also trying to get an education. We have a problem with homelessness. Individuals with mental illness, teens with low self-esteem, families living in homeless shelters, adults can't keep a job themselves, lose their homes. There are community shelters that are in place that will take families in, social services available, and programs that are readily accessible for families, individual adults, and teens. There is a lot that we can do to reach out to help the homeless. Just like Tristan in the second grade, who still lives in a motel and attending school regularly. Homelessness is a very serious problem that won't disappear overnight. We must continue to work to help make life better for these homeless families. We can't sit comfortably in our homes thinking that everything is fine in our society when young children and teens are struggling to find a comfortable home to lay their heads down at night. No, homelessness, it won't go away. It won't go away overnight. But we must continue to work together as individuals and as a community to help change the circumstances and the environment for homeless children, teens, and adults for a better life. So children like Tristan and his family can finally have a comfortable place that they can call home. Thank you.